Hello and welcome to this episode of Sabbath Worship with Ben. Hope you all enjoy it, and as usual, we'll have a lesson and a presentation. Hope you all will have a blessed Sabbath. This week's lesson is entitled My Way versus God's Way. The memory verse is, My children, I will only be with you a little while longer. Where I go, you cannot follow. A new command I give you, love one another. Even as I have loved you, so love ye one another. By this everyone will know if you are my disciples, by if you love one another. John 13:33-35. In this week's lesson, Jesus and his disciples were all sitting around the table preparing to eat Passover. And this was after last week's lesson where we talked about Jesus. He washed the feet of the disciples, instructed them to humble themselves and to do the same to each other, and to carry this humility with them. So now they were all preparing to eat together. Before they did, Jesus spoke to them. He declared that one of them would betray him, and this greatly upset all of the disciples, and they all started asking if it was he himself who would betray Jesus. So Jesus told them it was he who would he said that he would dip the bread in the bowl and give it to the person who was guilty. Of course, back then they usually ate bread. This was the Passover feast, so they were all eating unleavened bread. They had some sort of dip for it. So Jesus passed this bread to Judas, and Judas asked him if it was him. So Jesus told him that he said so. And after this, Judas got up and left to go conspire with the Pharisees to betray Jesus, just as he had said. After Jesus did this, and Judas had left, he took the bread and divided it among the disciples. So he told them that this was his body, and that they were to partake and to eat of it. And then he passed around a cup of wine, told them that that was his blood, and they were to drink as well. Of course, he didn't literally mean that it was his body or his blood. He wasn't encouraging cannibalism here. It was a symbol of the new life that they were to be receiving. That's what the communion service is a model of. It's that we receive Jesus' life into us because he died for us and for the whole world. So it's kind of an honor, respect giving to that. So in this week's lesson, we can see that two important lessons are that Jesus wants us to partake of him, to receive his spirit, so that we can be made whole, so that we can have the victory over sin which he died to give us. And secondly, that we don't want to be like Judas, who was willing to accept bread from Jesus and then greeted him fondly in the garden, but was willing to betray him for money. So we need to put aside things that would get in between us and Jesus. Put him first in our lives. That's it for this week. Hope you all enjoyed this lesson. Now I'm going to be doing my presentations. Presentation is going to be based off of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So in Ecclesiastes 3 it says, To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to heal and a time to break down, a time to build up and a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, time to rend and a time to sue, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time, so that he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. So what this passage is all about, Ezekiel 3, 1-11. It's about just talking about, as we can see in the first verse, that there's a time for everything and a purpose, that sometimes people are born, same day others die, heal, and we tear down, and we build up. At the same time, we end up destroying and breaking down. It's not to say that everything is good. As Christians, we know that things like war and killing are very bad, things we want to avoid. But there is a purpose, or at least a reason for all of these things, and there is a time for them. Not a time to be doing them, rather, but a time where they'll be about. And for most of these things, it's important to know when to be able to build and when to know you need to take what you're doing down. It's part of life's unpredictableness, so to speak, is that we can all be reliant on the fact that there's times for everything, and if we're not doing the right thing in the right time, we won't be in the best place where we can be. You can see this in verse 11, where the writer talks about how everything is beautiful, and no one can find the work of God from beginning to end. And verse 12 it says, there's no good in them except a man rejoices and does good in his life. So even though there's times for everything, and it might be hard to see the full scope of what things are going to turn out to be, or what you should do when, but the real purpose of life is to rejoice and do good, to have Jesus in our lives. So that's our mission for this week, is to live in accordance with God's principles and to be faithful to His Word. Remember that there's a time for everything and to know when that time is. That's it for this week, for this episode of Sabbath Worship with Ben. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all will have a blessed Sabbath. Bye.